Thompson and Martyn got very drunk together, and Martyn passed out. When he woke, Thompson had nailed him under a carpet so he couldn't move his hands or feet. Martyn's revenge was on the following night to move Thompson's clock forward 5 hours. So he got up, still drunk, at 2 in the morning to catch a flight to the next gig. On
Hey everybody out there, welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and if you're new here, what we do is we do a bit of this, of course, but we also like to wedge in some song sharing. So John's going to offer up a track in this episode for me to go off and listen to. I'm going to do just that, and then we're going to come back and discuss it at length. And when I say length, just go off and look at some of our timestamps on these episodes. You'll be impressed or appalled. But John, it is your turn, as I mentioned, to offer me up a track. Who and what do we have today?
So the artist is John Martyn. Now, I think he has appeared in a shadowy figure on the fringes of some of our conversations, and he is definitely adjacent to other subtopics. So he may have floated across your consciousness, but I don't believe you know him
It's
or
such a
his
familiar
works.
sounding name, that I'm like, oh yeah, of course. But I'm sure that we've discussed it before, and I'm sure, once I give it a listen and talk to you, you'll be able to fill in all the blanks for me. So, what is the track by Mr. Martyn you're going to have me check out today?
Solid air.
Solid air, huh? All right. Well, that already sounds wildly intriguing and also oxymoronic. So let me go off, give this thing a spin, and I'll come back and let you know what I think. Mm.
Don't know what's going wrong inside. And I can tell you that it's hard to hide when you're living on.
This is really pretty thus far. The way it's kind of like unfurled. Begins with this subtle acoustic guitar that's lightly strummed, and there's this John's language, a bass bump, but it's on a. It sounds like it's on very much sounds like it's on an upright or double bass. So it's got this, which lends to this jazzy type feel, but more of like a not big band jazz, like smoke filled room, corner of the bar type jazz. And I really love the way that all sounds. It's very cool. And then he sings. Oh, there's also some tinkling on the keys a little bit there, I believe I caught. And he starts singing, and he's got this almost slack jawed delivery where there's. Enunciation is not the name of the game. However, it sounds awesome. For what it lacks in discernibility, it makes up for in droves with this kind of soulful, purr that he's got going on here. Obviously, it doesn't make it the easiest thing to understand, but it definitely sounds cool to these ears. There's also the way he's, and even this picture kind of illustrates it, the way his hand is like this, so you can tell he's kind of pick free. He's kind of pulling these strings as he's playing, and there's this like I know it sounds ridiculous because you're only removing a pick from the connection between his hand and the guitar, but there is this intimacy to how he's playing the instrument. You can hear a lot or all of like the movement in how he's playing at least to this point. And it actually kind of reminds me a lot of the way that Nick Drake plays when he's playing his acoustic guitar in the songs that we've done by him. Now, obviously, it sounds like this guy has got more role players involved, bringing, because I think there may have even been some cymbal stuff in the beginning, like shh. So there's more people involved with the bass, perhaps the drums, if I'm correct about the cymbals, the light piano work. So there's more role players involved in this, but the way he's playing the guitar does remind me a bit of Mr. Drake. So yeah, so far so good. That's never a bad thing, right? So yeah, let's see how it unfolds from here. That bass. Like that. I can't hear what he's saying. Oh my god. Did I just pull some inadvertent Bloody Mary situation where if you speak of Nick Drake's guitar playing enough, he comes to be I didn't mean to summon you, sir. Please go back to resting in peace. Yeah, that's really, really weird. Okay. All right. Well, now I'm thrown for a loop here because I don't know. Is this a Drake song that he's covering, which explains why the playing technique is reminding me of him? Why is this image here? Yeah, I know. I'd like to know the explanation as to why this visage of Nick Drake is making an appearance, how it relates to this song. All right. Well, let's listen to the damn thing and we'll find out, I suppose. But that's a really interesting turn of events that I didn't have in my bingo card.
Don't know what's going on in your mind, and I can tell you like what you find when you're moving through solid air.
Ooh. Yeah, his voice is interesting and I like it.
I know you, I love you, and I can be a friend like a follow you.
That and that bass work is really lovely. Been stoning. Ooh, more piano.
Finding and gold, you've been living on solid air. I don't know what's going on inside. I can tell you that it's hard to hide when you're living on solid.
Oh, I can tell you that it's hard to hide when you're living on solid air, solid air. This is interesting stuff. I'm trying to make the connection here. If this is just a Drake song that he's covering that John has yet to show me, maybe that's the case, but I'm wondering if maybe the song is about him? I don't know. It sounds so... And the concept of solid air is such an interesting little two-word phrase. Like, the states of matter, there are three of them. We all know this. Liquid, gas, solid. So you can have... you can have a solid liquid, but then it just becomes a solid, right? Until it thaws and then it becomes a liquid again. What is it to be solid air? Ooh, little plonks.
I don't know what's going on in your mind.
I don't know what it is in your mind, but I know you don't like what you find, or something like that. That sounds like it's about Nick Drake, and like his that funk, that depression that ate away at him. Let's take that back to make sure I heard that correctly. I think I did.
I don't know what's going on in your mind, but I know you don't like what you find.
Yeah.
Going through solitude.
Oh. Ooh.
I know you, I love you.
That sax.
Be a friend, I could follow you.
He's pulling hard on those strings. Yeah, there's extra twang on that guitar playing. Oh man.
In your time, but you've been walking on solid. Don't know what's going wrong inside.
That wavering note.
That is hard to hide when you're living on solid.
Those baleful notes. Now smoother.
I don't know what's going on in your mind, but I can tell you don't like what you find. Living on solid air. I know you, I love you. I'm hardly a friend. I can follow you anywhere.
Oh my god, those keys back there. Or if that's the... I don't know if that's a xylophone or what. Oh, there's some of these notes from the sax are so woeful. Oh yeah, that was a lot of things. It was pretty. It seemed sad, or like expressing sorrow, like musically especially. Although his voice, I think, at times really conveyed that too. He would go up to say air, and his voice would become airy and higher, and it was really interesting the way the word hit. It was almost like an, I don't know what the word is for it, but I know it's like an onomatopoeia, but it's like the word that you're using, your delivery takes on the sound of that word, or the feeling of that word. Where he says air and his voice becomes the air, or it sounds like it does. It hits that higher note. Yeah, this was really lovely. The way he like, the more emotional the song felt, the more fervent. I don't want to overstate it, but his like plucking and pulling of those strings as his strum turned to that, it kind of enhanced and lifted the emotional heft of the song. And yeah, this title is really something. I imagine that if air were to be solid, this thing that is supposed to provide you oxygen to breathe, or buoyancy to float, or that is to fan the flame of your spirit, all that stuff ceases. You can't have a buoyed spirit, or you can't breathe freely. You can't have your soul can't be set alight if there's not air fanning it, or lifting you, or filling your lungs. So is that what is solid air, like this state of depression that Nick Drake was in? I don't know. It would be a really cool little turn of phrase, or way to describe or diagnose whatever it was that he was going through. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb here and assume that this was, maybe, if he's writing a song about Nick Drake, this was a friend and contemporary. Even their styles are very similar. Now, maybe if I popped on another John Martyn song, it wouldn't sound anything like this, and he wrote it like this to sound like the man it was paying homage to, or that it was, who was the subject matter of the song. But I really, really enjoyed this. I mean, I enjoyed it as much, if not more, than some of the Nick Drake stuff itself. I mean, I don't know, there's a bit more mystique around the Nick Drake stuff. But with the one thing that is both a pro and a con to listening to Nick Drake stuff is that it's so stripped back, which really gives you a window into him, but doesn't necessarily enhance the song as a whole. I don't know. That's up to the listener to decide. And, one day you might catch me on either side of that argument. But what I can tell you is that listening to this with the, whatever that, xylophone instrument was, or cousin to it, and the saxophone, the keys, that double bass, kind of humming along and adding this resonance and richness and tone to the whole thing, sounded lovely, lovely. And John can let me know if that's a vibraphone, xylophone, whatever kind of phone. I know it's not the telephone. But yeah, we can clear all that up with him, and probably a shit ton more. I certainly hope so. I'm really interested in this guy, his style, his interest in Nick Drake, enough to write a song that I assume is about him. I imagine that whoever threw this video together didn't just, superfluously throw a 20-second snippet of the man in the middle of it, or in the early third of it, for no apparent reason. But yeah, all that, and then the meaning of this song and this interesting, title, Solid Air. I've got questions. I'm sure the man John's got answers. Let's get back to him.
Vasco da Gamo's back. So you've had a chew and a bit of Solid Air by Mr. Martyn. What do you reckon?
It was delicious. It was the first time I've ever had that dish. And I'll tell you what, I was surprised. It was more filling than I thought. I really did enjoy this track a lot, and I will get into explaining why here. It begins with this the subtle sounds of the acoustic guitar being lightly strummed, and then John, what you in your parlance would often refer to as a bass bump, makes an appearance. But lo and behold, it's not your typical bass bump. Yes, it doesn't come in the form of an electric bass. Rather, we have this stand-up double bass sound, which already has me intrigued. And then I'll just go ahead and shoot my wad on this aspect. I loved the use of it here because the dubious term. There's this added richness and texture to the hollow body of the upright bass and what it provides. There's extra resonance that creates almost this humming like sound that comes with the hollow body effect of the stand-up bass. So it was welcome, and also in a weird way, not in a weird way, but in a way, added this kind of like jazz element to the mix that I really appreciated quite a bit as well. So, and as this bass notation slides kind of to and fro, there appears some light tinkling on the keys and maybe, unless it was my mind playing tricks on me, some sort of low flourish on some cymbal stuff like was happening there as well. At least that's what I think I heard. I don't know. Our man John starts singing in this interesting, almost slack-jawed manner. But there's an undeniably appealing and soulful nature to his voice too. So at this point, I'm catching like every third word, but what he's lacking in discernibility, in diction, in his delivery, he is making up for tenfold with character and charm. So I'm like really interested. I'm hanging on every word, but I'm only picking up every two or so. But yeah, go on.
Kind of changes his delivery a bit throughout the song, but at bits you're them to, he kind of almost does this sort of jazz scatting mumble.
Yeah,
It's kind of yeah. It's
absolutely,
quite funny,
absolutely.
really. But it's that attitude that he brings with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. It fits the aesthetic perfectly. There were definitely times throughout this song where I was like, I feel like I'm in a smoke-filled jazz club. This isn't big band jazz. This is the darker underbelly of jazz, the heroin in the back room jazz. This sound is really appealing to me. So I'm definitely digging how this thing's unfolding thus far. Um, I also like that when he reaches for this high note, he sort of grasps at it and it becomes airy. And the word that he's hitting whilst doing this is the word air. So I don't know what the term is, but there's something onomatopoeic about this whole I'm using a word and then I'm taking on this sort of delivery that infers or begs the word that I'm singing. I just thought that that was clever and cool. Another way that I was kind of charmed by his delivery. And I'll say this, and you please provide me the benefit of the doubt because I swear this is how it unfolded. But as I started to focus on his guitar playing, one of the things that struck me was the intimacy that he uses when he plays his guitar. And it reminded me so much of Nick Drake's stuff with the addition of a couple extra sparsely used instruments. So, yes, Drake is a man, his guitar, and his truth, and this is a little bit more than that. But you can still hear, and even you could tell by the thumbnail of Martyn himself that his hand is poised like this, which it removes the pick from the playing technique, which I know that's only 1 degree of separation from the musician and the instrument is the pick, but removing that again adds this sense of intimacy. So you hear every brushed over string and movement of the hand on the fretboard, and you pick up all these little nuances that adds to that intimate feeling that I'm trying to like articulate here. So yeah, I really loved the way that sounded, and I really loved how I was reminded of someone else that we've done on this channel. And then holy shit, I swear to God, this wasn't planned. As I'm saying Nick Drake, within 12 seconds, the man appears on my screen as if I've just performed some Bloody Mary seance, talking about the intimacy of his acoustic guitar playing enough times on OBS will conjure a visage of the man himself. But here we are, he's staring back at me here, and I'm really surprised by this. And now I'm trying to do the math. I'm trying to understand why, outside of just it coincidentally sounding a bit like his guitar technique, why he's appearing here. So then I'm thinking, oh, well, if it sounds like his guitar technique to me, maybe this is a contemporary or a musician inspired by Drake taking a song and adding a little bit to it here with some of this, that, and the third instrument, and kind of running with something that you have yet to show me by him. So that's where I'm presuming that that's where we are right now at this juncture of the song. Now looking at him on the screen. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure of the line he delivers, but it sounds like you've been stoning and cold or something akin to that. But it's at this point, I'm using it as sort of this line of demarcation. It's like the 155 mark. He does he delivers it at at this point with like more, there's more gentle tinkles that sort of happen on the keys as they lightly dance across the soundscape. And shortly thereafter, he then attacks the line. I can tell you that it's hard to hide when you're living on solid air, solid air. And this time, with this delivery, it's like you had sort of alluded to earlier. This delivery style is evolving or changing, and it's become less of that slack-jawed, scatty jazz stuff, and it's got. I don't want to oversell it, but it's got more fervor into it, and it's something as close to emphatic as I've encountered this far in the song. So there's more emotion in his delivery here. Um, Also, I'm catching light plonks of either xylophone or vibraphone or some of the other. It's all I know is it ain't the telephone, but it's a part of that family of instruments, right? So I'm getting a bit of that. That's adding some nice little bits and added instrumentation to the mix here. Um, and it's finally jumping out to me uh, for the first time in the halfway point of the track. So now I'm wondering, is this something that I heard that happened earlier, but this is just the first time I'm hearing it, or did he just tactfully decide it's not going to be until the halfway point of the song that I introduce this? Either way, sounded great. I like the sort of stair climbing ascension of the notes played at one point on them as well. It really just sounded it was lovely. Um, so now I think I have the chorus figured out. It took me to the third one to finally piece all of these words together. But the parts that I was missing have also, I think, provided some clarity for me on the whole Nick Drake situation. So Martyn sings, I don't know what's going on in your mind, but I know you don't like what you find. Which reads to me like like he's directly suggesting someone he knows is struggling with depression. And given the quick glimpse of Drake earlier in the video, I imagine he's alluding to him. And just after this bit, there appears this tasteful little flourish on the saxophone, which is great, and I loved it. I didn't imagine a saxophone coming along, and it was nothing to bowl you over, but it was just enough to add this bit of richness to the soundscape. And this combined with more of that meandering key work adds texture to this portion of the track. And I mentioned the extra twang on the strings, earlier, and that same sound or technique appears again shortly after the 450 mark, um, where you can really hear him like pulling and releasing on the with his right hand, assuming he's a right-handed guitar player. Um, I can't remember from the shot, if I'm being honest with you. We also continue to get treated to some more of that great smoke-filled, room jazz sax as the song begins to wind down here. And you know how much I love the sax, so needless to say, I really enjoyed its feature throughout the latter stages of the song. Yeah, it was a really soulful and thought-provoking track, all the way down to the very name, which was clearly which he clearly references several times throughout it. This idea or concept of solid air. The and you know This idea of air being solid is a curious one. I imagine, the three, states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas, and that gas is the one that we often associate with air. And I imagine that if air is solid, it can't be breathed, and it can't provide for buoyancy, to lift you up. Um, and it can't feed the flame to keep you warm or to keep the fire for your passions burning. So it sounds like if you can't breathe and you're down and not raised up or buoyant, and your fire has been put out because of a lack of air, then you're probably pretty low, lower than whale shit, as my dad would say, which is a very interesting way to describe, or a descriptor to apply to feeling depressed or down. So this makes me think that, along with that little snippet from the chorus that I finally caught there toward the end, that this song is about Drake and his depression. The visage of him by the editor who made the video certainly helped. But yeah, I think that that's what we're working with. I'm sure you can provide clarity for all of those things and tell me a bit more about this interesting musician who, I think I said this in the reaction. Like, I really do adore some of this, like the stuff you've given me from Nick Drake, but I would say that this is on the same level for me, if not even a little. And it's probably those added instruments, right? That's all it needs. And sometimes it's great just to hear a guy on a guitar, but the way that this was put together, I really, really enjoyed this track quite a lot. So please tell me more about this one, John.
Sure, yeah. John Martyn, really interesting guy. Long career. I'm only going to gloss over certain bits because of the time elements here. We'll go back to him, I'm sure. I'll concentrate mainly on this song and album. So, overview of the guy, really interesting guy. Ian David McGeechee, OBE, Order of the British Empire. 1948 to 2009, was known professionally as John Martyn. Um, British singer, songwriter, and guitarist. And also born in Surrey, but grew up in Glasgow. And over a 40-year career, he released 23 studio albums and received widespread and frequent critical acclaim. The Times described him as an electrifying guitarist and singer whose music blurred the boundaries between folk, jazz, rock, and blues. And they're the genres associated with him, mostly folk, and then it sort of twisted into something else. So he started his career at the age of 17 as a key member of the Scottish folk music scene. This would be in the mid 60s. And he played a fusion of folk with blues, predominantly inspired by American, I didn't say, but I guess Delta blues. Um, he signed with Island Records and released his debut album. Wonderful title for a folk album, London Conversation, in 1967. By 1970, he had developed a wholly original and idiosyncratic sound. Acoustic guitar run through a fuzz box, phase shifter, and an echoplex, which is a tape delay machine. I think this sort of sound coming back about 15 years ago, but it was really pioneering back then. And it first appeared on the album Stormbringer with an exclamation mark, or point, as you guys would say, released that in February of that year of 1970. Stormbringer, point, was written and performed by Martyn and his then wife, Beverly Martyn, who previously recorded solo as Beverly Kuttner. Their second duo album, The Road to Ruin, was released in November of the same year. So 2 albums in 1 year by husband and wife. That's got a put a strain on things. Island Records felt that it would be more successful to market Martyn as a solo act. And so this is how all his subsequent albums were produced. Although Beverly continued to make appearances as a backing singer, as well as continuing as a solo artist herself, and perhaps making the tea.
Say, you gotta love the patriarchy. Also, the name of that album sounds like some high fantasy warrior's weapon of choice, like Stormbringer.
Yes. You just got the fist and the hilt coming out,
That's great.
By 1973, Martyn had also started to include jazz elements into his sound, as displayed on the album Solidaire.
Yeah.
So this is his fourth solo album. It was recorded in only 8 days, and featured Danny Thompson, who's been on the channel before in other episodes as a bass player, and members of Fairport Convention. Is this sounding familiar to other people's albums? Anyway, personnel for this album: John Martyn, vocals, acoustic and electric guitar, keyboards on the track The Easy Blues. Richard Thompson, who we've covered before, mandolin on Over the Hill. Simon Nicol, also harp on Over the Hill. Sue Draheim, violin on Over the Hill. Tony Coe, saxophone on Dreams by the Sea and Solidaire. John Rabbit Bundrick, acoustic and electric piano, organ, clavinets. Tristan Fry, vibraphone on Solidaire. Danny Thompson, acoustic bass. Dave Pegg, bass. Dave Mattix, He was a member of Federal Convention. Drums and Namoi Speedy Aquae Congas. So the title track was dedicated to a friend of Martyn's, Mr. Nick Drake, who would die of antidepressants. You could almost listen to this, think that this was perhaps a tribute to Drake after his death, but it
Yes.
was actually released 8 months before Drake's death.
Yeah, my first inclination was to think that this is some sort of
precedent.
posthumous, doff of the cap to a
Yeah.
friend. It's interesting that this is almost foreshadowing. A lot like Drake's own work, right? You know what I mean? Shit, the writing was on the wall when you're listening to his stuff. So I guess it was easy for his own friends to see where things were headed too, which is wildly sad.
I'll get into that in a sec. So the album also features a really interesting track, an avant-garde cover of a blues standard. Skip James's Devil Got My Woman, which is a great song. And it's been retitled here as I'd Rather Be the Devil, and performed with heavy use of Martyn's Echoplex tape delay effect. I was thinking about giving you it, but the album version, it sort of does this amazing stuff and then goes into this noodling bit, which is really odd and not very effective, I think. There is a live version which I might give you because it's something else. It really is. This whole album is great though, and it's different genres and styles and touches and some really, really good songs. The album cover is an example of Schleren photography demonstrating the solid nature of air. Schleren photography is a process for photographing fluid flow. Invented by the German physicist August Toepler in 1864 to study supersonic motion, is widely used in aeronautical engineering to photograph the flow of air and objects. So, as I say, reviews to this album at the time are kind of a bit mixed, and people are unsure. Someone's doing something new, and it's like, but retrospectively down the years, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, this is a classic.
Let's write that shit.
AllMusic said Solid Air is one of the defining moments in British folk. Martyn stepped out of his comfort zone to record and produce it, including not only jazz and blues, but rock and plenty of sound effects, and featuring Rhodes piano on some of its tracks, dismaying some fans while winning a ton more for its genre-blurring presentation. Pitchfork, who normally terrible. I know they must have got some guest writer in, which they rarely use because this person makes a lot of sense, and this is highly dubious. But they have said this: it's all about the atmosphere. The vibraphone ripples like pebbles on a nighttime lake. And what's remarkable is something that was a Martyn superpower: how sounds refract his emotions and subject matter. On the opening title track, the wafting vibraphone emulates the depressive fog of the song's subject. You've been taking your time, you've been living on solid air, Martyn sings, puffing out each word like smoke rings. Solid air perfectly describes the invisible force of depression, but it could also represent a narcotized stupor or the paranoid fringes of psychedelic exploration. At the end of alternating verses, Martyn intones, don't know what's going wrong in your mind, and I can tell you that you don't like what you find. It might be an outreach to a host of people, someone who's suicidal, someone on a bad trip, a drunk, maybe all three. Unfortunately, we know whom it's about. Martyn first sang the vocal melody to Paul Wheeler over the phone after visiting their mutual friend Nick Drake in 1972. Martyn and Drake were an unlikely pair. The former bellicose and working class, the latter moody and patrician, but they shared a love of substances, guitars, and dark humour, and they were both noticeably sensitive. Tristan Fry's vibraphone was defective, and to get the undulating sound on solid air, he had to employ a process called finger dampening, where you have to stop each note with your hand before batting the next one. The musicians had to be legitimately sensitive to their instruments and to each other, a manifestation of a song in which the protagonist is trying to be sensitive to his friend's plight, which played out in real life. Martyn never told Drake or anyone else who Solid Air was about until after Drake's death. It's a really interesting write of that. Solid Air was rated as the 67th greatest British album ever by the British music magazine Q, and the album is included in the book 1001 Albums You Must Hear Before You Are Shot to Death. So here it is, 1973,
That was
and
at
if I
least the
try and
working
get this,
title of that book.
yes. Next to it, Roxy Music for Your Pleasure, Faust, Herbie Hancock's Headhunters, Over the Page, Mock the Hoople, Tubular Bells, Going the Other Way, Genesis, Let's Get It On. Oh, Space Ritual, Hawkwind. Ooh, John Cale, Paris, 1919. Cannes, Future Days. Lou Reed, Berlin. My word, what a
Yeah.
time to be alive. I was. Anyway, lyrics. You've been taking your time and you've been living on solid air. You've been walking the line and you've been living on solid air. Don't know what's going round inside, but I can tell you that it's hard to hide when you're living on solid air. You've been painting the blues and you've been looking through solid air. You've been seeing it through and you've been looking through solid air. I don't know what's going round in your mind, and I can tell you you don't like what you find when you're moving through solid air. Solid air. I know you, I love you, and I could be your friend. I can follow you anywhere, even through solid air. You've been stoning it cold. You've been living on solid air. You've been finding it cold. You've been living on solid air. I don't know what's going on inside. I can tell you that it's hard to hide when you're living on solid air. You've been getting too deep. You've been living on solid air. You've been missing your sleep and you've been moving through solid air. I don't know what's going on in your mind, but I know you don't like what you find when you're moving through solid air. Solid air. I know you, I love you, and I can be your friend. I can follow you anywhere, even through solid air. You've been walking your line, you've been walking on solid air, you've been taking your time, but you've been walking on solid air. Don't know what's going on inside, but I tell you, it's hard to hide when you're living on solid air. Solid air. You've been painting the blues, and you've been looking through solid air. You've been seeing it through, and you've been looking through solid air. Don't know what's going round in your mind, and I can tell you, you don't like what you find when you're moving through solid air. Solid air. I know you, I love you, and I can be your friend. I can follow you anywhere, even through solid air. Solid air, solid air. Asked by John Helbury what he meant by solid air, John Martyn said, it is obvious. He's been known for disliking unpicking his lyrics. The cover can explain part of the metaphor. Even if we don't see it, we're not living in an invisible world of air. It has a density that we need to support. And it supports us, obviously. Solid air is a metaphor for the way Martyn saw Drake dealing with everyday life. He would turn up at Martyn's house, Drake, in Hastings, and spend hours staring out the window. Something as easy as breathing in the air is imagined as hard, solid. Living becomes difficult with depression. This song is about friendship. Martyn told it about it in another interview. It was done for a friend of mine, and it was done right with very clear motives. And I'm very pleased with it for varying reasons. It has got a very simple message, but you'll have to work that out for yourself. That's what he said on the subject.
Mm.
So Martyn continued to experiment with subsequent albums, and I won't go into all that. There's loads to explore, and he enjoyed more than his fair share of recreational adventures. He was a larger-than-life character in all senses of the word. So he was great friends. He toured with Richard Thompson and the Free guitarist Paul Kossoff, who would die early because of his heroin addiction. Who once broke a bottle over his head. The Melody Maker journalist Alan Jones described seeing Martyn backstage looking, in quotes, like he'd been drinking since the dawn of time, which is a great quote. Somewhere on that tour, Thompson and Martyn headed into a bar at a college gig to sort out somebody they thought had beaten Kossoff up. They discovered he'd been lying to them about who started it, and after a serious shouting session in the dressing room, onlookers were astonished to witness the door open and Kossoff, the star guitarist, battered, bruised, and very, very out of it, being bodily hurled into the corridor to lie there semi-conscious before the gig. That's how it was on the road with John Martyn. On one occasion, Thompson and Martyn got very drunk together and Martyn passed out. When he woke, Thompson had nailed him under a carpet so he couldn't move his hands or feet. Martyn's revenge was on the following night to move Thompson's clock forward 5 hours. So he got up, still drunk, at 2 in the morning to catch a flight to the next gig. On another occasion, they were found fighting in a Highland loch in their underpants. Apparently, they'd been fishing in the middle of the night in winter.
Oh my.
And there's so many stories about John Martyn, but very, very famously, in 1977, during a game of poker, Sid Vicious insulted Martyn. So the folk singer beat the living crap out of the punk star and, the sort of media's public enemy number one. Just smacked the shit out of him.
That's great. I love the insult to injury too, with the idea of you being from like the brash street tough punk genre, getting your ass handed to you by like, the smooth, soft, folk genre. That's great.
I mean, that's who he comes across in this song, whatever. He was a big, burly, seemingly
Yeah.
Glaswegian guy,
Right.
and you wouldn't mess with him. But it's great.
Yeah.
So a lot of adventures down the line. He continued releasing albums well into the noughties. And there's stuff that he dabbled in trip hop and other stuff as well. Really
Oh, wow.
interesting. We'll get into that another time. But in 2006, Martyn's right leg below the knee was amputated as the result of a burst cyst that led to septicemia. Um, he was appointed OBE, so Order of the British Empire, on the weird honours thing in this country,
Right.
in the 2009 New Year's Honours list, and he died a few weeks later at a hospital in Thomastown, County Kilkenny, Ireland. Oh my God, they killed Kenny. You bastards. From a acute respiratory distress syndrome. He had been living in Thomastown with his partner, Teresa Walsh, who she'd actually gone to the palace to accept his OBE because he wasn't fit to travel. Martyn's health had been affected by his lifelong abuse of drugs and alcohol.
Sure.
He was survived by his partner, Teresa, and his children, Mari, Wesley, and Spencer McGeechee. His final album, Heaven and Earth, was released posthumously in 2011. Phil Collins, who sort of worked with him throughout like the 70s and 80s, drummed on a lot of his stuff. They were big mates. He paid tribute to him, saying, "John's passing is terribly, terribly sad. I'd worked with and known him since the late 70s, and he was a great friend. He was uncompromising, which made him infuriating to some people, but he was unique, and we'll never see the likes of him again. I loved him dearly, and we'll miss him very much." So there you go.
Wow.
That's just a little snippet into to John Martyn. There's loads more stories, as you can imagine, larger than life character, but a real interesting musically, really interesting character as well, on the way he sort of blended stuff. And there's not another song on the album that sounds like this track. They're all
Interesting.
different. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I would
And
assume, given the folk nature of it, that it would all be somewhat akin to this, but it's interesting to hear that, there are different things happening on an album. It's not all same-ish.
oh yeah, I mean, Don't Want to Know is a great song. I really like that. Go Down Easy as well. And May You Never was like a sort of gently sort of ballady type kind of song, which became a standard in his set. And yeah, that live version of I'd Rather Be the Devil is absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it's a really, really good album. Really good album. But yeah, so that's the first little taste of John Martyn. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yes.
I should wrap things up. Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you enjoyed this, please hit the like button. Hit it like it owes you money. And drop some comments because we'd love to hear from you. I'm sure there's people out there that know a lot more about John Martyn than I do. I only scratched the surface, and really, it was because of his link with Drake that I sort of started exploring his music, to be fair. And there is some really good footage on YouTube of him live and stuff. So I might from that. If you've got suggestions, please drop some comments. I would love to hear from you about what else we should do. I kind of know this album, Bless the Weather, bit of Stormbringer. I mean, that's about it, really. So yeah, anything else? love to hear from you. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really appreciate everybody who does support the channel, and we're happy to say that there's been over 900 days since the last industrial action on this channel, so we're looking good. That being said, thanks so much for watching. I will see all of you in the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.